Hey everyone, Gerald Pauschmann here, The Point TV. I know you're quite surprised because you're looking at me right now and you're saying there's no whiskey here. Maybe because I'm going to be fueled with my own whiskey kind of like intervention here. I've got with me, as you can see, a very beautiful lady sitting next to me. Her name's Melinda Richards and she's written a book. But we're not going to talk too much about the book. We'll mention it, but I think because she came to me and she said, read a couple of passages here. What do you think? About some certain topics within the book, and you know, some of them you're going to be very surprised. And the reason why I love Mel right now is that because I think she thinks like a man, but she's a real woman. Now I know a lot of you go, how does a man think? We don't, do we? So Mel, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me come and hang out with you, Gerald. It's going to be fun.
Not many people get to hang out with the G-Mann.
I know. I feel very privileged right now.
You do? Okay. Is that because you're female and you're white, and so you're showing now you have white privilege?
No, it's probably just because I think you're a cool guy and I like you.
Oh, okay. So is that going to be a topic in your book, as cool guys reign high?
Yes, I think so. And in terms of the level of victimhood and the layers of victimhood and identity politics, you are really down the bottom of the rung right now. But I'm only just one above you because, you know, I'm a white woman, but I am above you because I am a woman. So.
Can you just explain to me something? You mentioned this word called identity politics. There's not such a thing as identity politics.
Oh yes, there is. That's the way we're living our lives in society right now. Unfortunately, everyone's got to be slot into a box, and unfortunately, if you're a white man these days, particularly in a Western country such as Australia, Canada, the US, the UK, even Western Europe, you are not playing too well in the sandpit in the identity politics game. I can tell you, you're going right down to the bottom rung of the ladder.
One of your chapters in the book was something on freedom of speech. You'll miss it when it's gone. Is that the subtitle?
Yes, it is. That is right, yes.
So we have here in Australia, we've got Article 19. Article 19 is something like every person has the right to freedom of speech, freedom of expression, the freedom to be able to roam this country here without being stopped for maybe thinking inappropriately, maybe to do what I want. So I can stand out the front of this house and I can yell and scream anything that I want. Is that right?
Yes, you should be able to do that.
Without
Absolutely.
inciting violence. If I incite violence.
I mean, there are laws, there's freedom of speech and there's laws to protect freedom of speech. But there's also things to protect us from hate speech and violence and inciting violence. But there is a very clear definition between freedom of speech and hate speech. And we do have laws in the country, I believe, and the laws are robust enough to protect us from individual hate speech which attacks us. Those defamation laws are there to protect our own personal reputations in society.
But hang on, but that's not a crime. Hate speech isn't a crime.
If what I said to you actually goes out into the wider society, and I have some traction in that society, and you lose a little bit of your reputation, or some people in your businesses go, yes, well, I agree with that, and I don't like you anymore either, you can actually feel a little bit personally affronted, and that's defamation. And I think that if people are attacking you personally, that's totally different from going out there and talking about an opinion that you might have about a religion or a race of people or the state of the nation or crime rates or anything like that. If you have an opinion about any of those general things, that's something that we need to protect. And everyone has the right to that opinion. Now, if you're going to be abusive towards an individual person, that impacts their life, yes, I think you should individually have some recourse. But if you have an opinion about anything else, you have the right to express that opinion and not be targeted or abused or vilified or shamed in a wider society, the way that particularly the left wing and the left side of politics is doing right now. And I think people are so afraid of being shamed for having an opinion now in our society that it is starting to water down the way that people express themselves. It waters down the way that we talk. It waters down our relationships, and it's certainly watering down the relationships between men and women particularly.
It's interesting you said something. You said something in the effect of, you know, if I was to attack you and you would then be defamed in some way where you lose business, so that word attack. And then you said rather than sitting down and having a conversation It sounds to me very much what the left do is the attack, and the right predominantly would like to sit down and just have a rational conversation like this. Why is that? Why do you think the left is so intent on hurting and attacking?
I think because Western civilization now has reached a point of maturity in our history. And I think it goes to the heart of why the left wing and the socialism around the world and the left side of politics are losing ground. And I think that they're in panic mode. And I think that when people get into panic mode, sometimes they start to behave poorly because they're worried. And there is a lot of worry going on the left side of politics because there's a lot of talk about social engineering, there's a lot of talk about socialism, there's a lot of talk about climate emergency and climate change, which is driving a social engineering framework, and people are pushing back on that. And mainstream people, everyday people, the majority of the quiet Australians, I mean, we call them quiet, but it's time we get a little bit more noisy about it. Those people are now, no, they're not stupid, and they can see it happening. And so when you get pushed into a corner, when you start losing, a lot of people, when they lose, behave badly. And I think that the ramping up of the bad behaviour of people that represent left-wing views in this country is actually getting to such a point now where it's turning into a circus and it's turning into a farce. And we're watching people make ridiculous statements, but people are still afraid to confront that bad behaviour because people don't want confrontation. People hate it. And that's why the more conservative views, or even the centre left-wing views, people are pulling back because they don't want that bad behaviour directed at them.
It's interesting you use the word the left a lot. Here in Australia, if we were to say, you know, if I was to ask you, hey Mel, are you more liberal? In Australia here, liberal is opposite to what the liberal is
exactly,
in the US.
Liberal,
So I'm going to go the US framework of liberal. Do you consider yourself to be still liberal, but not a leftist?
I am actually probably more to the right, but I'm very centre-right. So I believe that we do need sustainable technology and to preserve our environment for future generations. Now that typically is a bit of a left side of the world's view, but I have a very strong environmental and humanitarian bent. And I also am very much into tolerating cultures and people. And I have a very high tolerance to diversity. So I'm probably right in the centre. What I think is happening now is that the left is sort of starting to blow themselves apart a little bit. And so many people now are talking about moving right to the left, to the extreme left. And they do it to feel better about themselves. They do it because they think that if I virtue signal and I tell people how tolerant and fantastic I am, that, you know, I'm going to belong to a tribe and I'll belong to these people and I'll feel better about myself. So it's actually got nothing to do with anybody else. It's just got something to do with people's own views about wanting to always feel good in their lives and feel like they have a purpose. Now the left provide a very shallow, a very, very shallow purpose for those people that don't want to go to a deeper level. They will say, you know, blah, blah, blah is racist, like Donald Trump, for instance. Oh, Donald Trump's racist. So that's a broad statement. It got thrown out there before he got elected. It gets thrown out there now, despite all of the evidence and despite all of the facts. And love or hate Donald Trump, one thing he is not is he's not racist. But you see, they say it so often, and the Democrats.
But what about when people?
There,
no, but hang on. What about when people? When Donald Trump said something or tweeted out, you know, shitholes like Venezuela or.
That's right. Yeah.
So doesn't that make him racist?
Well, no. Have you been to Venezuela?
Yeah,
have you? You know, I mean, the
would
fact
I want
is,
to?
Yeah, and I mean, he's not just talking about Venezuela. He's also talking about
the other
places,
shitholes.
The places in America.
Yeah.
Now, just because the fact that he said, you know what, this part of Minnesota is really awful, or this part over here is terrible.
It's fact.
If you walk down the streets and you look at the homeless and you look at how poor those people are, and you look at the housing and you look at the public housing, you look at the videos. I mean, he is not saying anything about race. He's not saying anything about the types of people that are living there. He is just saying that in America, the land where you have a wealth and opportunity, this is unacceptable in our country. He wants to lift those communities up. He's not saying it because he's criticising black people or Hispanic people or anything. He's saying this place is a shithole and it needs fixing, and I'm going to be the one to drive an economic outcome to fix it. We're not going to go in there and throw lots of money at it because clearly that hasn't worked. What I need to do as president is I need to get people back to work.
Yeah.
And that's all he's saying. But you see, because you can't argue with that, the only way that you can argue is bring in the identity politics, throw the word racism around, one of the most overused words in our society right now, and say, you know what, you're racist because we've lost the argument because we don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
And I mean, as soon as you start throwing those words around, you've
homophobic,
lost.
racist,
Fascist.
sexist,
I mean,
fascist.
that's a brilliant
It's a great
one.
one, isn't it?
That's fantastic.
What the fascists do is actually they do what they are probably fighting against.
Well, exactly.
Well,
that's exactly right.
That's
it's an oxymoron.
Totally. Yeah. I've got so many things that I want to talk about. Like there's, if we were to go down the list of things, I would say, let's talk about snowflakes. Let's talk about climate change. Let's talk about what's happening here in Australia. By the way, those people from overseas, we have 5 seasons here in Australia. We've got spring, summer, autumn, winter, and what the fuck. This is the season that we're in at the moment. It's what the hell is going on here? So there's a lot of things I do want to cover, and I also want to cover, Donald Trump's win in 2020. See what I did there? See? Everyone's thinking, what?
He will win by a landslide.
I think once you mention the word Trump to a lot of people, and in the business that I'm in where I talk to a lot of people, sometimes I'll say the word, I'll put something up on the screen and I'll go, get me your reaction, get me your emotion, tell me what you're feeling right now when I put the word Trump up there. And it's amazing how many people don't know the person, have never met the person, will not even engage with the person, but because of maybe a couple of comments that he had made. Now, him ass pinching and pussy grabbing and all that, am I a fan of that? Hell no. But step back or step forward if you've ever been guilty of saying something yourself where you've gone, gee, that was a bit inappropriate. Like, let's not mention Justin Trudeau with blackface, where he now gets off on being able to say, well, that was a time and a period of when he happened. But, we use the word Trump, people are triggered. We say the word snowflakes, people are triggered. We say the word climate change, and we can't even pick a side whether we should go, I believe that there is climate change, but I need more evidence. And I think we're getting to a stage where this conversation that we're having now doesn't seem to happen. So can I talk to you about the era of the snowflake?
Yes.
I never heard of this term prior to about 4 or 5 years ago.
The era of the offended, the era of the snowflake, the era of mental illness, the era of suicide, the era of, woe is me. The irony around all of what's happening in our society around people trying to cope with the difficulties of life is that we are actually in the greatest period of prosperity in human history. We are actually in a period of relative peace across the world. We are at the most peaceful we have ever been in human history. We are living in Western civilizations have the highest rates of wealth per capita now than any time in human history. So it's a paradox that we're living in the greatest period of our generations, and yet we are becoming depressed, we're becoming morose, we don't understand the meaning of life, we find it hard to teach youth how to get traction out there and how to be meaningful. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But one of the major reasons is we are trying to stop people from freely speaking about issues and offending people, and therefore we have knocked any resilience out of our society. We are knocking out the ability for people to be resilient to life's hardships, to their disappointments, to dealing with difficult people, to hearing things that they might not necessarily like, but dealing with that as well. We have somehow turned around, and through trying to create even greater utopia, we're smashing people against each other and destroying our relationships because people can't be open and honest. But
how did all this happen? Was this the era of the psychologist turning around and saying, every person should be able to get a medal. Every person is now a winner. Every person who competes in this team, I think here in Australia now we're playing a game of football, which would be kind of similar to your gridiron, or in the say in the UK it might be rugby. But we're not allowing. I think we're stopping kids from being able to play football the way that tradition allows kids to play football, which is if you score a try or you kick a goal, that's worth a point. But they're here in Australia now, what they're bringing in is that we're going to bring in a gameless, a scoreless game.
That's
we're,
right.
We're not going to count the points anymore.
I think scoreless games go till the kids are about 10 years old. And the really interesting thing about that is that any psychologist that you speak to, that I used to speak to years ago, will tell you that you are mind mapped by the time you were 10.
Totally.
So your value system and your mind map and your core approach to life and your core understanding of human relationships and winning and losing and disappointment and excitement and all of those range of emotions that you need are pretty much laid out by the time we're 10. So you can imagine, being nurtured till you're 10, and then all of a sudden you have to be scored when you're 12, 13, 14, and all of a sudden you start losing, and then all of a sudden you get more work at school, and then you have to actually work really hard and do more homework, and you get a bit stressed, and you think, oh my God, I'm stressed. I've never been told to work hard before. I certainly never got taught how to lose. I certainly never got taught how to handle disappointment. So by the time you get to 17 or 18, you might get into the university degree, and now you go to university and you hopefully leave home, although the average age of leaving home now is about 28, I hear, which is also ridiculous.
That's cool. I would love to not leave home.
Yeah, 18
Rudy, I'm coming home.
Yeah, that's right. So by the time you get to university, you're at a point in your life where you really have to be an adult. You have to stand on your own 2 feet, and you have absolutely no idea how to do that. You have no idea how to cope with disappointment. You have no idea how to deal with a university professor that doesn't mollycoddle you or tells you that this is your responsibility to get this work done. Oh, you don't have mummy and daddy sitting behind you helping you with your homework or nurturing you or keeping you at home or letting you off the hook with things. It's awful to see how under-resilient kids are now under 30 years old. I mean, I have a lot of people that work for me that are young people, and it's tragic to see their inability to really take the knocks of life on the chin and do better.
Is it because we've allowed society now to be able to say things like, if you get offended, we'll protect you and put you in a safe space, and we'll have people around you that will help motivate you to achieve better, but we won't have the people who can correct you on your work? Because I think the greatest thing in any leader that we can have is the leader to be able to give feedback. And that feedback is that if you've done something wrong, I should be able to feed back to you individually, pull you aside and say, hey, Jill, look, I noticed that you're doing really well with this customer service program, but I'm also noticing the way that you answer the phone, you roll your eyes a little bit. They don't like that. They don't like being pulled up.
I had an incident recently, exactly that, except unfortunately we have to move away from the youth for a second because this person was actually 50, but let's just pretend that...
So are you saying 50-year-olds can be snowflakes too?
Well, absolutely, because I mean, this person had been underperforming now for 2 or 3 months, and the direct supervisor had said, you really need to work on this. You've made mistakes here. And she went on, it didn't exist in my day, but she went on 2 weeks stress leave. Now, for a business, a small business, 2 weeks stress leave is devastating, particularly in that particular administrative role that she had. What I guess that you can't give people feedback now. You're not allowed to say things. The employment laws, the protection of people at all levels and at all ages, it's driving business into the ground. We now have law after law after law layering the protection of people's feelings and people's hurts, and we can always, that's a segue into women in the workforce.
But if people are offended, then they have a right to be offended, don't they?
Absolutely, that's their choice. They can be offended. And
No. Is it a choice? Like, for example, like you said earlier on, you said something to me that I'm an ass, I'm lazy, I'm whatever other adjectives you put in there. Are you saying that I made the choice whether I should take that offence, or whether I then say, you know what, I'm not going to be a part of this, I'll just get up, I'll walk out the door, and I don't have to listen to this?
Absolutely, I'm one person. I mean, I've said that to you, and you can run to HR and complain. If that bullying, that sort of language and bullying, which by the way was extremely extreme, and that would never happen. But if if you did feel like you were being bullied and harassed month after month after month after month, look, absolutely,
Totally, yes.
you have the right to go to someone, probably not HR, I don't even believe in HR departments, but you have the right to go to the leadership within the organisation you work for and say, listen, this person's saying these sorts of things. It goes against the organisation's core values,
yep.
and then that organisation needs to deal with it. That is a leadership issue. It's got nothing to do with HR. It is the CEO, it are the managers, it is the business owners. I mean, they create the corporate culture and they need to manage it. And let me say to you that if you manage that poorly, you will go out of business pretty quickly. If you're a small to medium-sized business, you will go out of business quickly. I find that extreme behaviour very, very rare in the workforce, but I also know that it is still your choice how you deal with that. If you put it in context and go, well, she's a troll on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, and she's only got X amount of followers, and I really don't care what Melinda thinks, so I need to move on. I need to get over that, because that's one person, and I don't have thousands of people saying that about me. I have one person. If you had thousands of people saying it about you, you might take a look in the mirror one day and go, gee, I'm getting a lot of people saying this. But if it's one person, that's your choice, how you handle it. But you need the tools to be able to handle it. You need, as an adult, to be able to say, well, here are my choices. I'm a resilient person. I can handle this. I can handle this person. And I know how to do it because I was brought up in a world through school, through my parents, through university, where life's lessons were taught to me very, very, very clearly. Now, we have a whole generation of kids coming out of university and going in and coming out of university, which is early adulthood, who really don't have the skills or the tools to be able to cope with the ups and downs of life. And you don't leave this world unscathed. You will have very bad things happen to you. You will probably have tragedies in your life. You will have stress. But let me tell you, most of that does not happen under 30. Most of that happens when you're 35 and up, when life really starts to grab a hold of you. Your 20s is supposed to be a time of carefree, travelling and learning and just being. I mean, getting hung up on offence and political correctness and getting hung up on behaviours and what people are doing, like, take a chill pill, take a break, have fun. Talk to people, flirt with people. Boys and girls need to start flirting more.
Oh, no, you're going to flirting. That's another whole new day that we can talk about.
Yeah, the men and women thing, the whole feminist thing. Yeah, that's definitely a topic for another day.
Before we go, and we're going to certainly just carry this on because there's way too much to talk about. But would you mind being wolf whistled in the street?
Oh, I love the wolf whistle, boys. Give me a wolf whistle.
Whistle.
Makes me feel good. You know what? Because I suppose...
Fragile. You just need some ego boosting.
Sometimes I need a little ego boost, and the wolf whistle's a good little way. It's better than sending a dick pic, put it that way.
Yeah, don't do that. So what do you think? What we want to do is we want to throw it out to you. A couple of things that we spoke about, the snowflake era. We talked a little bit about freedom of speech. I want to hear your comments. Do you think Mel's on track, or do you think, oh my God, she is just way out of line? Gerald, pull her in because she doesn't know what she's talking about. Love to hear what you have to say. Put it down in the comments. If you have any questions for Mel, I'd love to ask her those in the next time that we meet.